attractive. Still sipping that moonshine and I'm plastered.
I want to make sure everyone can see my sweatshirt, Fresh Prince.
Oh,
I want to make sure everyone can see just the thought I put into this.
Queenin over here, sister girl, all of the above, with my kente cloth and my logo pink color.
Looks nice.
Coordinating over here.
Well, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Moonlighters Club. I'm here with Shana Bryant. As you may or may not know, if you're watching this on YouTube, you may have seen Shana speaking at one of our showcases. And how the showcase works. It's like a TED Talk, but better. Maybe not better. I don't know. It's basically this on a stage or on a platform.
Live.
It's live.
In front of people.
Right.
Real breathing people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the people we interview get on stage for about 8 minutes and they tell people what it's like to work a 9 to 5, if you like it, if you don't like it, having an idea and then growing that idea out into becoming a full-fledged business. And basically all the gripe that comes with that, which is a lot. So Shana spoke in August, and it was awesome. We've known each other for a while. I've been wanting to do this interview for a while, so thank you for letting me do this.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, this is gonna be cool. So I know your story, but let's I guess go to the work part about it because that's where all this starts from.
Mm-hmm.
When you were in the midst of working a full-time job, let's say after a couple years, before that, were you always like, I know I'm gonna be an entrepreneur someday? Or was it the work where you were starting to see what you were good at and having to deal with, being an employee where you like, you know what, I just want to get up out of here and do my own business?
So I think there's moments like throughout our lives as adults, we're just like, Dad, wouldn't it be nice to just like be doing my own thing? I don't want to work for these people. I don't want to get up every morning and go and do this thing, right? But we know that we've been conditioned and it's part of capitalism that it's, the bosses and then there's the workers. And so have always been a worker, grew up watching my parents be workers. And I think we all have a generation above us that, you work your 9 to 5, you get a pension, you get a, retirement. And that was just what was. And so they both have been at their jobs for over 30 years, getting ready to retire with great packages. That's not our reality. And so what I do know is that I have always been, I recognize now, I've had this kind of hustle and spirit. And over the years, I went from being a teen mom, planning my son's events and supporting that, to being a serial volunteer, working with nonprofits. And again, found myself always planning events. My 9 to 5 jobs always gave me, or incorporated coordinating, multitasking, logistics, operations, managing up. And so that has what I've been doing for over 15 years, working in the healthcare field, literally managing up nurses, doctors, administrative directors, and so forth. And so I definitely recognized over the last 3 to 5 years that I think I'm good at this thing. And, dag, it would be nice to jump out and have my own thing. Don't really know or didn't know exactly what that meant. But maybe about 3 years ago in 2016, started a business and was doing that part-time, planning events, kind of after 5. And before that, I had been planning a conference part-time for almost a decade now, a girls' conference. And so was always doing this thing. And so definitely recognized that it was no longer just a thing. It was something I was good at. Called it Shana Bryant Consulting. Thought I was going to be a virtual assistant at first, actually.
Really?
Just because, I figured it's the administrative work, it's the logistics, it's the operations, it's paying the department's bills, again, managing in-house smaller events, meetings, managing up. And so I thought I was going to be a virtual assistant when I first jumped out with Shana Bryant Consulting.
So when you were in the healthcare industry, was it... were you only doing event stuff outside of work?
Yes.
Okay, initially, that's all you were doing. So what's it like? What were you doing in the healthcare industry? Because I used to work with my cousin Crystal, and I would see some of the stuff. Like, everyone knows doctors. My mom was a nurse. So I knew a little bit about doctors, not really, but nurses, I knew what they do. But there's a lot of other stuff that happens in the hospital. And I remember I would just see Crystal and it would just look like straight madness. Like I'd come in, actually come in to gamble. Started coming in to give her money for my like football picks.
So you would, oh yes,
Yeah.
we would do the squares, and Kristen would manage the squares for the Super Bowl or any games. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just remember, it never looked like anybody was relaxed.
It was a chaos.
So what were you doing?
So I'm gonna say it was controlled chaos. So I worked in the inpatient side. We had I worked in a busy lab where they put in pacemakers, which some folks may be familiar with, as well as we did other inpatient and outpatient procedures. And so we had 5 procedure rooms. And so part of my job, I was the unit coordinator. And so I literally managed, communicated with the floors, let them know when patients were going to be on the schedule, when they were coming down, work with the charge nurse every day, and kind of coordinated. We've got 20 patients coming in between the outside, the waiting room, as well as upstairs in the inpatient, and just kind of coordinated. There were 6 or 7 different procedures that we did, and some range from 45 minutes to 5 to 6 to 8 hours. So we worked with anesthesia. We work with surgeons. We work with, we had outpatient, other doctors who would come in and actually do their procedures. So you would come in for a procedure and your cardiologist would come in and actually do it. So we would have to wait for you to come. I would collect all of the pre-op information. I did all of the ordering, from medical supplies to office supplies to staple supplies, all of the internal paperwork.
Yeah.
I work with transportation that brought the patients up and down. I would call for that at times. I would go get patients on stretchers. I would make sure we had enough stretchers in the lab. I worked with the linen to make sure we had warm blankets and whatever else. I would actually work with stocking the rooms at times because I did all of the inventory. So we would have medical device reps. I worked with the medical device reps. So literally coordinating many parts that made this machine move along. So literally bringing patients in, I would help tee them up. The only thing I didn't do was actually put IVs in the rooms, but I would be in the procedure rooms helping the nurses set up at times, turning over the room. I would even get a broom and mop if I needed to, because I knew, if it was a packed day, we just literally couldn't wait for the cleaning staff to come in and clean the room. And so at times I would be taking the trash out. I would be pulling anesthesia machines out. And yeah, I did a little bit of everything literally to make this machine run.
So, that makes you feel awful. What I do at most of my jobs is internet.
Oh, no. But I loved it because I felt like, without me, it couldn't run. And so I was like the glue that held it together. If there was emergency, I called the codes. I just could pick up the phone and, if I needed something. I had been doing this in that lab before I left for a decade. And so I literally could call, and Joe, from anesthesia would be like, "Hey, Shana," right? Like, It just becomes so familiar that you just knew how to get shit done, and they depended on it.
So how long were you doing this?
For a decade.
I
was in the last lab where your cousin worked for a decade.
So towards the end, what caused a transition from this place to the next place?
So towards the end, what caused a transition is I got restless. Working in that environment, you see lots of fellows. There's the specialty, it was electrophysiology, working with the heart. And so these fellows come through every 2 years. There would be research fellows that would come through. There would be techs from the medical device companies and all the different catheters and so forth we would order. There was a lot of transition within those as well. They were always moving. And so I definitely at some point got really restless. And I knew that I had started going to Roxbury Community College for my associate's degree when my son was first started school in the first grade. And so it got to a point where in 2010, he was now heading into high school, and I knew I needed to finish my degree. And so that I kicked it into gear in 2010, graduated in 2012 with my associate's degree, moved on to UMass Boston, and in 2012 got my degree in political science. And 2014. So 2012 got my associate's, left that job, went to school full-time and became a full-time student, got my bachelor's degree in 2014. And then from there, did a couple of temp jobs, went back into the healthcare for another year and a half, working with cardiology again as the administrative director at another hospital. Again, still managing up. I was doing all of the invoicing, the reimbursements for cardiology department. So that was 80 plus doctors, managing the administrative director and his calendar, who was responsible for 5 to 10 sub departments within cardiology. And then from there, left there, got another job working with a nonprofit, which felt amazing. And that nonprofit laid me off and gave me a 4-month notice. And at that point, it became clear that I said, all right, God, either I can do somebody else's thing, or at this point I had been doing the event planning part-time officially for almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And I figured, I know my value. I'm learning my value. I do dope ass events. I think I can do this. And the worst that can happen is I go back to somebody else's 9 to 5. And that last job I started working remotely 2 or 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And so I recognized I'm never going back into somebody's office 5 days a week. It'll never happen again. Because now I can demand that. I didn't know I could demand it before. I can find the ideal job.
Yeah.
And I knew that if nothing else, I was going to increase my value while I'm out here doing this full time.
Yeah.
So again, the worst that can happen is I'm going to find the ideal job that works for me. And if I need to go back to working for somebody else, it's still going to be on my terms.
When you went back to school, was in the back of your head, were you thinking it was for just getting better jobs?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was for getting better jobs because every job had the minimum of a bachelor's degree.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I went back to school late. I went back at around 2010. I was 27, like 28.
So I was 32.
And I remember I would...
finishing to like grind it out and finish, yeah.
Because I grew off all my 20s, which I'm very proud of. I just learned how much I could drink, how to leave drunken voicemails. I just learned all of that. Like
not my story. That's not my story. I learned to be a badass. I was a single mom raising my son.
Yeah, I was the opposite of you. I pretty much
so
just floated
my
through.
20s was being a responsible mom, and he was my 24/7. And so there was a shift when he went to high school in my 30s, and it became like, who is Shana? Shana's this.
Yeah. What was it like going back to school? Because I remember, for me, it was depressing. Like when I was living in Minnesota, I came back to Boston. I was 28, and I was living with different family members, trying to get because I couldn't get into school at Bunker Hill because I wasn't a resident yet. So I missed a year. I couldn't get jobs, and I remember I had to live in Brockton for a bit, outside of Boston. So I had to commute to go to work. And my weekends, I would just be alone. And I'd watch Hulu and I would just drink. Like I would by myself. Like I would drink E&J and just watch Hulu videos. And I didn't know I was depressed. I just thought I was at home drinking alone because this is what people do when you live in Brockton in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
But I just remember because my 20s were fun. Like it was just not thinking about responsibility, not knowing what I was going to do. And then having to go back to school, it was such a reality check. Like I was taking freshman classes at 28. So we were having like intro to public speaking. And it'd be they were like, hi, my name is Aubrey. I'm 18 with like braces. And then I get up like, yo, I'm Joel. I'm almost 30. Yeah.
Figuring my life out.
So like to get literally like some people were looking at the class like, what? So I just remember that transition. For you, what was it like? Like, what was it like when you're like, all right, I'm going back to school, being in that environment all over again, learning again? Was it weird? Was it super exciting?
So to me, it was exciting. So fast forward, moving backwards, I started RCC when my son was in the first grade. So I started in like 2002. Okay. Right? Part-time classes, sometimes a full semester load, sometimes not clearly because it took me 10 years, right? And so I would do a class here, maybe a weekend class, take a year off, do a hiatus, come back. And so when I committed in 2010 to like, I've got to finish this because I've got to graduate when he does in 2014, it was full-fledged. I'm in this, night courses, Saturday courses, whatever it took to get it done. Yeah. And I will say most of my classes, because I did the Saturday classes a lot and the evening courses, it was adults. So I wasn't actually in a space with focused adults that every class they were 3 or 4 folks that like really you bonded with and connected with, and that's who you got to the finish line when we graduated in 2012. So I was very determined and focused, and I was ready to leave my job.
Okay, good.
So I knew I was graduating and leaving this job and moving on to be a full-time student.
So I remember you talking to us about that. You're doing event stuff on the side when you're back in school. You went through a couple of healthcare jobs. Then you got to the nonprofit. And I remember specifically talking to you about this nonprofit. Was it a good job? Like before the layoffs? Before the layoffs hit the fan?
Before the layoffs,
was it cool?
It was a great job. It was. I was an affiliate manager, which meant this organization had 180 different youth serving programs across the country. And I got to be like the customer service interface between them and the national organization.
Okay.
I did lots of troubleshooting and multitasking and figuring out things. And a major component of my job was going to be planning a national directors conference. So I was going to travel to DC.
Yeah.
So I was, I was all in. When I got hired, I was like, word, I'm going to be planning events and I'm going to be doing this customer service, helping people. And I believed in the organization's vision and mission. And so it was great that now much of the work that I did after 5, working with and in the community, now I felt like, I was merging some of that and just feeling good about getting up and going to work and working for an organization that was doing good work for the community and for people, Black and brown babies that look like me.
So I remember I've worked at professionally pretty much all startups. So the idea of layoffs is real, you know what I mean? But most of the time it's paranoia. So how'd you even know did you know the layoffs were coming? Did you hear rumblings when they started?
No, I didn't know the layoffs were coming. We went from in July, we're coming out of the deficit and things are well, and they had monthly team meeting or organization meetings. In July, the organization was going well, coming out of the deficit. And then August, layoffs, staff reductions were going to happen. That rumbling started, and I had been there less than a year. October was going to make a year, and I was like this department, they need it. It's an interface with the programs. I'm good. And I wonder who that's going to be. That's very interesting that you hear about the first round of cuts and you're like, wow, okay, cool, we're good. And then I think it was a Thursday or a Friday, I get an email from the head of HR. And because it's a small nonprofit, I literally could walk 10 feet up the hall and be like, Joe, just got that email from you. What's up? I'm meeting with you and the CEO of the organization. I'm not no dummy here. What's up? Tell me, am I being fired? And short of it is, no, you're not being fired, but we are laying you off. I had never been fired in my life. And so I was in my feelings. Had another meeting. I stayed late until I seen another senior staff person and was like, hey, I'm not going to go through the weekend trying to figure out what's happening in my life. Right.
Yeah.
I just don't feel good. And they were like, it's staff reductions and that's what's happening. But we're going to give you all 4 months notice, or 4 months time. And then we're going to extend your benefits to the end of the year, which was another month and a half. So I was told in August and laid off as of December 1st last year. So
you were already doing your thing on the side. You're surprised by the layoffs. When it hits, when you're out the door, what are you initially feeling? Like what?
So as of last December, what was I feeling?
Right when you're out. You got a couple of events on the side that you were doing. You just got laid off.
And I had secured 2 events.
Yeah. Okay. So you had.
So I secured 2 contracts, which actually one of them ended up being that employer. So that conference that was going to be part of my job, now I became a contractor for it, and was going to plan that event. So that was dope. First time I knew that you can make your employer your client. Word, this is good. And then I got another event contract, and so I knew I was going to be good for 6 months out, right? And full transparency, I also knew I was going to be getting unemployment, right?
Okay.
And so my cushion was good, and I felt good for 6 months financially. Now, running a business and having to manage myself and my time, that was scary as fuck. I literally remember the first week, or the first 2 or 3 days into the first week, and my sleep pattern was awful, right? And it was just oh shit, I have to plan my time. Oh, I have to get up and do something.
Yeah.
And that contract work wasn't actually really going to start until January.
Okay.
Right. So like one initial planning committee meeting, each client, and then and what I did do is I took a 10-day trip to Costa Rica.
Okay.
Right.
Was it just kind of like, let me use my head?
I was just like, I'm gonna go. Like one, I had never taken a vacation longer than 7 days. And so like back in September, I was like, I'm gonna find a way to go away for a whole month. I'm gonna figure this out. I don't even know how. I don't know what the money's gonna look like, but I know I can go somewhere where it's inexpensive and I can rent a house for like a month, right? Month didn't happen. But I ended up doing 10 days in Costa Rica, not, very expensive, just laid back, warm weather, close. One of them, I went to Arenal, which is where the non-active volcano is. So I had a room with a thermal spa in my backyard and the volcano view.
That's awesome.
Zip lining, ATV riding through pedals and cows in the pasture. This is what, December? This is December of last year for 10 days in Costa Rica.
Okay.
And then I went to the Caribbean coast. So like every 10th person, it was a Black woman with locks. It was great. It was great. And then I had to come home and I was like, oh, I'm responsible for my time.
Yeah.
This is interesting. Oh, I got to get, I can't sleep till noon. And, my pattern became up to 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And then I don't get up till 10, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, but wait, the morning is almost gone and you probably should have sent out an email and, you got to move things along. And so you can't start your day at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon because everybody else is shutting down at this point, Shana. But the first official 2 weeks, it was scary. And I remember day 3 calling a friend or getting a call and being like, hey girl, how you doing? And I was like, yo, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not sleeping. I don't know what I'm doing. What the hell am I doing? It was scary. Yeah. And there's still moments of just I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm pushing through though.
I just left my job for various reasons, but one, I didn't want to be there. And I remember this was on, my last day was Tuesday.
Last week?
This week. This past Tuesday was my last day
2 days, 3 days ago?
2 days, yes. And I remember in my head going, okay, I know I'm going away. I'm going to leave the country on Saturday, so I know there's stuff I have to do.
It was the same kind of thing.
And I was just in my head, I'm out. I'm about to get mad stuff done. I was like, oh, I'm about to do all this, right? And I remember that first day, I had been so used to getting up and going to work and just doing what I was supposed to be doing at work. I didn't even know what to do. I felt, and it was mental. I was sitting there subconsciously finding ways to not commit to doing what I was supposed to be doing. I'd busy around the house and doing stuff. Exactly. And it was so weird having time, not structured, not having to go to a meeting. And I just after a day, I'm like, you know what? Let me not stress it. I know I'm gonna have to bust my ass and get some work done. Let me just realize that I don't have to do that anymore and come to peace mentally.
And this week is this is 3 days and then you're traveling, right?
Exactly.
And so it's kind of are you really gonna get into a pattern or a routine in these 3 days? Absolutely not.
Yeah. So what was that first event that you had secured? Once you finally you're all right, let me get this going. Let me try to figure out the schedule. When was that first event in that new year after you left?
Secured the first 2 contracts before December 1st.
Yep.
I signed my employer contract and another client. And one event was the third right before Memorial Day in May, and the other one was for June 12th of last year.
Okay.
Oh, of this year, actually. June 12th of this year.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So they were 6 and 7-month contracts.
Okay.
So kind of that first, I had planned the first initial planning committee meetings when I came back from Costa Rica, and started the 6-month timeline. But that first, it was my employer. It was okay. One, they told me I was getting unemployment, so I knew I was going to be okay if I needed to. And I got both deposits, 50%, before I left for Costa Rica.
So what?
So
Was that weird working with them? Like, not even from the layoff, but just like I know these people,
no,
and
so
I'm responsible.
It was great because I was working with my used to be boss.
Okay.
So literally, we vibed. She hired me,
Good.
right? Like she was like, yes, let's get this contract secured before you leave.
Okay.
Right? So I want the contract signed. I want your first invoice in to us, and I want you to get this money before you go away. I want whatever you do with the check, but I had that check cashed before I went away.
Good. How'd it go? How was the event?
They were both fantastic. I'm getting ready to secure the previous employer before I go away again this year.
Yeah. So this past year, what's it been like as far as working on the consulting, working on the events? 'Cause you were doing multiple things. What was that like? That first full year of I'm doing my own thing.
It was scary. It's really scary. I think for the first 6 months, I just put my head down and worked. I secured 4 more contracts between February and June.
Yeah.
To do additional events, and so I had I had 1 event in May and 4 events in June.
Okay.
Yeah. 1 event in May, 4 events in June, went to a conference in May. And then for my own personal brands, which on top of doing the event planning, fundraisers, galas, open houses, mostly with nonprofits, I had these other great ideas and passion projects and things that I wanted to do as well. And so with my brand Hustle Times 2, I decided I was going to do quarterly panel discussions. And so Hustle Times 2 is the idea that you can have a 9 to 5 and you can have a side hustle. So it was is for career-driven and entrepreneurship-focused women. And so would have quarterly events. And so for first, second, and third quarter, so March, June, and September, we did panel discussions, brought 2 to 3 women together similar to this. And they would share their stories of how they're maneuvering or managing, balancing their 9 to 5s and their after 5 side hustle, passion project. And so, yes, when you say not only was I managing the client events, I was also managing my own events, which
and it's funny. I forget that you were doing client events because when we're talking about your events.
We were always talking about Hustle Times too, and securing the planners and getting food, and
so the whole time you were still looking for securing and executing.
So I knew I was going to be good till September with those events that I had secured and executed too. So I wasn't aggressively looking, but I did manage to secure 3 more contracts for the rest of the year, which life is good because I'm going to Ghana for 2 weeks. So life was good.
Did you ever get crazy overwhelmed? Like how would you?
Yes, that's when I think we started to really hang out. So crazy overwhelmed was between, I would say, April 1st until June, which was, I was literally in logistics overload. We may say, I thought it was heaven at some point when I was like, oh, I got 5 events that I'm planning. No, it was a logistics overload because anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks out of an event, it is all things logistics, like all of the final details, making sure you have all of your vendor contracts, making sure you're doing volunteer training. For the event that I did with my previous employer, it was a national directors conference and it was in DC. And so I had to fly to DC. I had never seen this venue before. I had to make sure that they brought in an outside AV company. And so had to make sure he was all set managing his contract. And literally we had 8 rooms that we had to like set up with projectors and screens and make sure, so managing the food contract and making sure the room attrition rate, meaning they had filled all of the rooms that they had contracted in the venue contract. And then I had 250 person gala that we literally were transforming a whole space. So I brought in a decor vendor, DJ, photo booth, food, photographer, videographer, and transformed 2 spaces for that event. Another event, it was another 400-person gala. Didn't have to completely transform that space, but had to manage the venue. They were doing a live auction, had to create and manage that process, manage volunteers, photographer, videographer, DJ, photo booth. And so what I've actually done and tried to do this year is I do have preferred vendors that I now have been working with for 4 or 5, including my events. So photographer, DJ, vendor, decor person. They've become kind of my solid. Haven't figured out the exact videographer yet, but yeah, it was a lot. It was managing.
How do you not have
4
a nervous
projects.
breakdown? Like, I don't understand. Like, I would just shut down after, like,
because I couldn't. So this
yo, there's so many things flying around. That drives me crazy.
This is where when they say entrepreneurship is not for everyone, it absolutely is not, because this is where if I had a 9 to 5, this stuff stops at 5, right?
Yep.
A lot of this stuff stops at 5, and I can pick it up tomorrow, depending on the job. Yes, the higher you kind of move on up, you take some of this stuff home. But also, you can also just be like, well, it's not my thing, right? Like, yes, you can have a level of pride in your work, but it's not my thing, right? And I know I'm going to have a regular check for the most part coming through, right? This, at any moment, a client could be like, you are not doing your job. This is not working out. We're going to fire you. Right. So yes, you have some contract guarantees, right? That you're going to pay me for the work I did. And maybe a month out, you're like, you know what? We've got to move to somebody else because you're not doing. So there is no nervous breakdown. There is, or not in my world. I got lights to keep on. I like the heat in the winter. And I like to travel, and, I was committed to maintaining my lifestyle at minimum.
Yep.
And so there was some, looking at financial, what I needed, my monthly overhead to do this. And so, and I have been doing this, but like, I knew I could do this. I knew I was good at this.
Yep.
I knew I'd do this in my sleep. I didn't know I could do this like 4 to 6 events at the same time. That's where it becomes like year 2. What are you going to change? Because one person project managing 6 events is bananas, and I don't want to do that again.
How do you keep cool? How do you keep I've interviewed different people who do everything from pray, meditate, vacation. Like, what helps you kind of like
all of the above? I pray every night. I practice gratitude on a regular basis. So I pray at night. Literally, thank you, God, for keeping me today. Wake me up tomorrow. Like, thank you for letting me live my dream. Right. Yeah. Real simple. And then I pray for everyone in between, from the, supporters to those folks that, the friends and foes, because we all just trying to do the best we can for the most part, and pray for, family members and the squad, the circle of friends, because, without them, I wouldn't be here. And then in the morning I get up and I kind of I won't say I jump out of the bed, because I don't move out of the bed fast. But when I do, I'm like, thank you, God. You gave me another day to be great. Let's go. Let's go.
So now this year's rolling up, looking back, how did...
I feel good. I did 22 events and I had 13 clients.
Yeah.
I feel good. I feel good. I learned a lot.
Where would you be without the layoff? You think you'd still be working at the nonprofit?
Yeah. I would.
They're crazy.
I'm not sure that I would have just decided I was going to ride out on faith. I don't know. Or the contracts would have came enough that maybe it would have pushed me out the door. But I do know year 1, having that unemployment cushion is what allowed me to believe I could do this. And so now year 2 is kind of like, all right, you've got to replace that and continue to do what you're doing. And so it's a whole nother level of grind.
So we were talking about this a little bit before. So what are your plans now to crank the grind up?
Focus. To get a lot more focused. The business model is going to change so that this year, very much, I want to be an expert in the event planning space. That is my moneymaker. That's where I get my revenue from. And that's what's going to allow me to continue to increase my profit, so that I can grow I'm not interested in being a one-woman show. I will have a firm. And this is the other thing. You got to manifest what you want.
Yep,
right.
yep.
And so I'll meet folks and they're like, oh, I see you doing it. And I was like, I'm trying. And they, even over the last couple of weeks will push back and be like, no, you're actually doing it. Right.
Yeah.
Like, I see what you're doing. You're doing it. Right. And so very much pivoting and focusing. And so event planning, securing, the goal is to secure some retainer clients.
Okay.
So that I'm doing, multiple, and I'm not necessarily having to chase new prospects. So I'm having lots of prospect meetings now between November and January, hopefully no longer than February, that pretty much secure me for the rest of the year. That's the ultimate goal, and do a lot more speaking in spaces that, talk about like how to successfully do an event, right? What does that look like?
Yeah.
The goal is to create some type of coaching or online webinar where even I've gone to lots of events where entrepreneurs are putting them on,
Mm-hmm.
and I just kind of observe. We'll leave it at that. And I'm like, yep, this is a pain point that I'm getting ready to fix, because everybody wants to do an event. And then some of the things that I think I know I do well, like making sure it starts on time.
Yeah.
Making sure, your food vendors are there before your attendees, so you're not setting up when they're there, making sure you understand how the actual evening or the event should flow from your welcome to your closing, what that looks like, making sure that you've done a mic check and some, kind of basic things, making sure that you're branding so people walk in and there's a poster board or something that lets me know I'm at the right event, making sure your registration table is set up when people get there, or there's somebody at the table when people get, these just basic things that to me is just kind of like become a no-brainer. But if you are an entrepreneur, events is not your thing. And so that's the other, that's something else that I'm going to begin to like start doing in the new year, teaching folks how to do really well events, as well as continuing to execute dope ass events for my clients.
So to any young, anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur, specifically in event planning space, if there's any wisdom you could throw their way upon, they're just getting out, they're just getting started, getting their couple. Yeah.
So I would say anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur, period. I think I've heard this a lot, and now it definitely it has resonated. It makes sense. Find a need. We hear this all the time.
Yeah.
Find a need and fix somebody's pain points. Fix the problem, right? And so all of those things that I just mentioned, for example, working with entrepreneurs, we all have been to an event that we remember for whatever reason didn't go right. And so those are the problems. Those are the problems that I fix when it comes to an event, right? Like, think of two things two things you think that you went to an event and didn't go well. Yeah. That you remember typically.
Oh, I can remember, man. Food, being the setup not being ready.
That annoys you.
People not showing up on time, things not starting on time. Food not being situated.
Good food, bad food?
Bad food. Yes, bad food. One vendor coming super late. Someone going, oh, we can't do this because they haven't showed up yet. The photographer's not here yet, or whatever. Disorganization in general. Yeah. It's a lot.
Right. And so those are the kinds of things where when you're fixing and you find the pain point, and then you can speak to that, and your branding demonstrates that you can fix that, now you become a need. And so whether it's for the entrepreneur who thinks they can put on a great event, but they didn't, or the corporation that just doesn't have the human capital, or the nonprofit, right, to execute a high level event. And so I pride myself on high impact and flawless events. It's never flawless, right? But if I can make it appear flawless, that's what you paid me to do.
I like that,
right? And so you need to it needs to be a need based. So find something that's not happening, or find something that you can fix. Find something that is always going to be. People are always going to do events, and even in this social media world where this is how we're connecting now, we also recognize that people are missing out on that organic thing.
Yep.
That ability to connect. We still need to be able to be in front of people and be around people. So people are going to do events.
Yeah.
Right? There is somewhat of a shift that people recognize we still need to do events. We cannot do all of this like connecting just on the computer or in, social media. Like that's not.
No.
So fix the problem, find a need, and provide really high quality service.
What advice could you give any budding mompreneurs? Because that's something I can't speak to.
Yeah. So I would say I have an interesting story just in that what I was doing part-time or like after 5, it really didn't start until my son was in high school. And so when my son was in high school, he actually moved to another city to go to a better public school system and move with my dad.
Okay.
And so I had empty nest. My son was 14, and because I had him as a teenager, I was 30 when I had empty nest. And I had to like reinvent myself. Who is Shana? I'm no longer just his mother, right? Like that was very much how I presented myself because he was my 24/7. My life revolved around picking him, dropping him off, feeding him, keeping a roof over his head, right? Like that was my world, his sports, right? And trying to go to school part-time, which, I kicked it into gear when he actually moved out my house. So it's a little bit different sometimes, right? Because I didn't do this when he was a toddler. I would just say that you've got to have a support system. Mm-hmm. And to never get discouraged. Like it is hard. It's hard, but just kind of push through it. Like if you're a lot of moms, we're doing a business because we're fixing something, or it was a need that we had, right? Or we're doing something that we recognize brings us joy of some sort. And so I would just say you just need to push through it. You need to try to create a circle of people that believe in you. And you can't always, it's not always going to be your family or the closest friends. Because what I also recognize is entrepreneurship, again, is not for everyone. And so you're going to have some growing pains where you realize that like, my growth is dependent on who I'm around, and some of your friends and family may be to your detriment. And so you're not going to be able to tell, small people think small, right? So their ideas are small and they're not dreamers. And you're going to really start to recognize who these people are. And there's no shade, but I'm probably not going to be spending the same amount of time with you anymore. Your conversations are going to shift.
Yeah.
And just be okay with that. Like literally lean into all of that uncomfortable, because we are, or at least I've recognized when you're comfortable, you're really kind of complacent, and that's not where your growth is going to happen. And so if it becomes uncomfortable, lean into it. Figure out not if it's giving you anxiety or your intuition is telling you don't do this, but it really is okay to dream big, right? Like I say at this point, dream beyond your wildest dreams, because you don't know what it is, and allow others to speak stuff into you. You got to say it, right? You got to have an accountability community partner, manifest this stuff. Thank God, ask God, don't ask God why all the time, because, things just, they work themselves out. And the last thing is I've recognized, heard it before, and now I get it. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. Part of that is you're going to have to get rid of some folks. You're going to have some real clarity. You're going to have to get focused. You're going to have to be, moving on a different level so that when opportunities come to you, you're actually going to receive them. Opportunities come and you're not always ready to receive them because you're not ready.
Yeah.
Like, you're just not in that place to be able to even do it, to receive it, to execute it. And so what I recognize is what's coming to me is for me because I'm ready. Let's go. Year 2. Let's go.
Good. That was good. That's that staying ready. There were a lot of times where I would want a bunch of money to fall in my lap and or to meet a perfect person. But if it had happened at those times, I wouldn't have been ready for it. Like I would just embarrass myself. So if you work every day, I just had an interview with one of my good friends, Stevie Hopkins, and he had the best quote: "Work creates more work."
Mm-hmm.
So you bust your butt, keep working towards something.
But then you got to be ready for
comes
it.
from, and you got to be ready to execute.
Right. So you all this first year is going to create more work, and now do I have a plan in place to receive it? So I'm not like, damn, I just missed that other contract because I wasn't ready. So
and the last thing you want to do is have a bad first impression, and that comes from not being ready.
Right.
So that's what the grind is. The grind is you waking up every day and forming good habits so that when
systems,
these things come,
processes, people, to be ready.
Yeah. So where can we find you? With some links.
Where can you find me?
So
as he said, the business is Shana Bryant Consulting. That is SHANA BRYANT Consulting. My website is shanabryant.net. And then my social media handles are at Shana Bryant Consulting on Instagram and Facebook.
Shana, this was great.
Thank you, Joe.
This is good.
This was good.
Practice, yeah.
It's much easier than talking to a live audience. Yes.
But no,
this
is
Thank
neat.
you for the opportunity.
These are always recharging. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you just get caught up in your own head. And then you talk it out with someone who's going through the same thing. You're like, all right, we're not crazy.
Yeah, no, we're not crazy.
Recharge
We're grinding it out and, it's meant for us.
Yeah. Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed it. We'll have plenty more coming your way soon. And until next time, peace.
See you in the new year.